I just had a great interview with Sherri Samuel. Sherri Samuel is a primary educator and the founder of SEL Hub. We had a great conversation where we talked about mental health in young people. We talked about parenting. We talked about corporal punishment. We talked about ethnic minorities, how different cultures approach parenting. And what is the best route? What can we learn as parents? How parenting evolves? How can we teach young children to express their emotions? We talk about mental health. Is it different for men than it is for women? Loads more in this episode, so make sure you tune in. Podcast and talk about kids being hit. And I think it's a really important topic. There'll be a lot of parents watching this today.
But I know I wouldn't beat my children because I remember how it used to feel. I used to really fear my mum used to do to punish us. So say, for example, if I didn't wash the dishes, she would verbally abuse me. The mindsets when you're stuck in your ways. But for children, you can do it in such simple ways and condition them from a young age.
Burst into tears in a very male-dominated environment. I think that he would start to lose a bit of trust from the other men around him. Negative voice you've got in your head sometimes telling you can't do something or you're not good enough for this or whatever it is. People pleasing. Do you think that we're raising agreeable kids because we don't want to have uncomfortable situations with friends and family?
Their body is their own. They have the right to have consent and have boundaries. If they don't want to have someone, they don't have to.
So welcome, Sherri, to the Warrior Academy podcast.
Hi, nice to meet you.
It's a pleasure to have you on. I've seen some of your content, and I know that your message is very aligned with our message here at the Warrior Academy to help parents. For anyone who doesn't know who you are or hasn't seen your stuff, could you tell us a little about you and what you do?
Yeah, my name is Sherri, and I am the founder of the SEL Hub, and we are a voice for children's wellbeing. So we provide wellbeing journals to help support children with regulating their emotions, and also a children's wellbeing app for schools to help. Well, it's being used as a mental health first aid tool to help them support with children's emotional regulation too.
Awesome. And how long have you been doing this now?
For the past 3 years.
3 years, yeah?
Yeah.
And so you're from the UK?
I am.
Whereabouts in the UK?
In Essex.
Okay, cool. So tell me about life in Essex growing up. What was life like?
Oh, it's very interesting. Grew up in a very underprivileged household with a single parent. It was quite a struggle actually. That's what actually has boosted my passion for starting this business.
Tell me about that. Where does the passion come from?
So as I was saying, I grew up in an underprivileged household. My mum was a single mum of 4 children. Although my dad did provide for us financially what he could, he actually lived abroad. And it had a big, massive toll on my brother's emotional health. And that toll actually it actually resulted in him committing suicide at the age of 22. And the reason why it's fueled my passion is because I feel that this could have been prevented if there were tools like mine in schools or services like mine that help support parents like mine.
What was your brother missing at that stage in his life? I mean, obviously, is he missing that kind of father figure role, or was he in communication with him or not?
In addition to the missing the father, boys need their father around, or they need a male figure around, a strong role model. But in addition to that, when I say underprivileged, I mean like absolute poverty. Sometimes we would go to school hungry. Sometimes we would have had to walk to school for 2 miles before a lesson. And females it's so much easier for them to express their emotions and talk about things that they're going through. And my brother used to transfer that pain into anger. And when he was in school, he used to get into lots of fights with the teachers, with his peers. And what he really needed was for someone to identify, well, all forms of behaviour is communication, right? But he just couldn't express that. So he needed tools or a person that was able to identify that he was really trying to communicate in some way. So yeah, I think that's why it was quite a struggle growing up.
So there's that a kind of emotional repression within, which kind of expresses itself in anger and frustration and...
Yeah, this is one thing that I'm always preaching about. I always talk about, and even in the ethnic minority household, how my mum would deal with that as a parent. And she did the best she could, you don't know what you don't know. Would be corporate punishment. So the problem is that what he would do is anytime he wasn't experiencing anything other than happiness, what he would do was shut down. And rather than being able to speak about his emotions, it would come out in behavior, and then he would just be beaten from it. Rather than having that conversation, like one thing that I teach parents, I recently had a workshop actually, which is free, especially in underprivileged households, is having a sharing hour or having a point in the week when you can share with your kids and you can have an open space and they can talk about how they're feeling. Or if your kids don't feel comfortable, having journals and teaching them that they can do that. So you can actually sit down and discuss what's really going on. But unfortunately, in underprivileged households as well, sometimes they don't have the time. My mum used to have 2 jobs. So this is where schools step in. Because if a child isn't nurtured emotionally and they're having emotional issues, it is actually going to affect them academically. And one quick and easy thing that you could do is just like literally put a calm corner in your classroom and my tools in there. And like, for example, my app, when the kids actually go on their own individual system and they put in how they're feeling, their thoughts, which are prompted, and it just seems really easy. It's not something that's very intrusive. It then goes onto the teacher's system so they can actually go and observe and actually have a discussion. And then they could call the parents in and have a discussion with the parents and build that awareness. Or even schools just providing training for parents, especially in like the underprivileged or even some privileged households. Parents don't know how to deal with their children's emotions. They see behavior and then they punish them, they take their iPads away or they send them to their rooms, but really that child just wants to talk about what's going on in their lives.
Why do you think that parents use corporal punishment even today? Why do you think parents hit their kids?
Unfortunately, in the ethnic minority household, that's what they were taught. That's just what they know. You don't know what you don't know.
So what do we now know that should prevent us from doing that?
That all forms of behavior is communication. If you understood that all forms of behavior is communication, then you would actually figure out a way that you can actually talk to your children.
I feel like a lot of parents who hit their kids are doing it because they're being reactive in the moment, because they don't necessarily know how to deal with the strong emotion that they have to process when their child is disrupted.
Yeah, most definitely. I agree with you on that one. But again, it comes down to education. So if we did have training in, like, I'm mainly focused on schools because I know trying to target the individual, but targeting a whole school and getting that free training, if schools, for example, did training and workshops for parents on teaching them how to identify this and how to react to certain behaviors, then I think that would solve the problem.
I feel like there's a lot of parents who, they're not just doing it because they're reactive, like they're doing it because it's a learned way of parenting, right? We look back and we're like, well, this is how I was brought up, and so it didn't do me any harm, sort of thing. Do you know what I mean? And that's the kind of attitude towards it. We've never had anyone come on the podcast and talk about kids being hit, and I think it's a really important topic. There'll be a lot of parents watching this today, not today, but watching it when it comes out, who still hit their kids. They spank their kids, they slap their kids, whatever it is, as a form of punishment, whether it's reactive or potentially even worse, doing it as a kind of planned punishment. You've done that, therefore these are the consequences. What would you say to these parents who do that?
I would say it's a short-term solution. Restorative justice is the best solution. Imagine so for example, you have people in America, there's a lot of people that commit crimes in America and they're just thrown in jail and there's no training to support them on why that behavior or how it's impacting you, how it's impacting others, and then they come out and they reoffend. But it's the same for the classrooms. Or at home, if a child does something and you react by hitting them, all you're doing is solving that problem in the moment. But restorative justice will help children identify how that has impacted them, how that's going to impact someone else. So if they understood this, that it's going to have a long-term impact and positive outcome on your parenting, then maybe they might decide to do it in a different way.
It's interesting because a lot of people who have been hit when they were kids, they go on then to hit their own kids, and they justify it by saying things like, well, I was a very naughty kid. If I didn't have that, then I could have ended up worse, and I was very difficult to deal with, or it didn't do me any harm. And it's one of those things where it's hard to prove otherwise, isn't it? But there's certain countries like Sweden that banned it entirely, right? No one does it over there.
But what about when your parents are not looking? My mum used to hit me, and I knew if I knew she wasn't going to find out, I'd still do what I was doing.
Right.
So
So despite the consequences,
that's
but maybe you just become more sneaky because the consequences are so severe. You become even more sneaky. You know, it's interesting, isn't it?
that's why it's important to get them to understand the why.
Yeah.
Once they understand the why, the impact that it's going, because your parents are always, they're trying to protect you. That's how I see it. That's why she used to obviously beat me. She was trying to protect me. But if I understood the why behind it and how it's impacting me, maybe my decisions might have been different. But I know I wouldn't beat my children because I remember how it used to feel. I used to really fear my mum.
Yeah. And it's one of those things as well. I think that as a parent, if you are the sort of parent who is doing that, maybe it's a lack of education in terms of the best way to kind of understand the future of your child when they go through that. How does the behavior change because of that, as a result of that, or does it not at all? And I think that often parents doing that out of fear of their child, their behavior getting worse, or out of fear of them not having discipline and therefore their life getting worse because of that. But it's that balance of the parent fearing what their child could become and the parent not knowing how to deal with their own emotions. And I feel like, parenting is just this process of understanding what triggers you as well. It's this kind of self-discovery journey, right? And so, I mean, when you look back and you look at your mum in that situation, she was hitting you when you were younger, you forgive her for that because that's the only education she had up to that point, right?
Oh, 100%. She actually had to run away from home at a young age. So she actually grew up with us. So most definitely she didn't know how to parent. There's no rule book as well that's given. Which again, that's why there's another need for parenting sessions, which I think would just literally change the world.
It's one of the reasons I love working with young people is because, you're planting these seeds that end up growing up into, a completely different course or direction of life. As we spoke outside, I spoke about where the work had to be started, working with these underprivileged kids young men who just wanted to fight each other, and then, planting these seeds of a moral compass and, respect and conduct and how to behave in certain ways, and watching their life evolve. It was like, well, if I could just work with them when they were younger, that compounding effect of those good decisions would be life-changing, right?
Most definitely, and having empathy, teaching others who are dealing with those types of children and young adults to have empathy. Because you know what? Me, myself, when I think about where I've come from, another thing that my mum used to do to punish us, so say, for example, if I didn't wash the dishes, she would verbally abuse me. Like, the most unkind words would be said to me. And I remember in schools, that's how I used to respond when I'd have arguments. And I didn't realize that it would impact people and it was going so deep.
Just a model behavior.
Model behavior. And then I used to wonder why people didn't want to be my friend. And then it wasn't until I got a little bit older and I started to socialize with people who know how to manage conflict in different ways that I learned how to communicate with people properly. And I was able to change. And that was through empathy. Those people that were around me had empathy, and like you have empathy with those children or those young adults. And I feel like we need more of that in the classroom as well, rather than excluding or even at home.
It's interesting, isn't it? Communication is that word I'm just hearing again and again. And for me, communication is one of the most important skills we can pass on to our kids. Not just communicating their ideas, but communicating their feelings, communicating what they're going through. That all comes down to how we communicate as parents with them, right? Because they're learning from us, first of all, how to communicate, how to do anything.
Oh, 100%. Parents and adults in general, parents and carers, making sure that we're being very aware of how we respond to them. But again, that's something that's learned behavior. You need to know how to. You think about, even as adults, women and men, they don't know how to communicate in households. I think that's why most people get divorced.
Communication.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that's the secret to a strong relationship, right? Communication, communicating how you feel, communicating when you're happy, when you're not happy, communicating your boundaries, whatever it is, with that other person you're with. And the same with friendship groups and everything. It's like, if you want strong friendship groups or strong friendships, you need to have excellent communication with them.
Oh, 100%. Even communication is where actually just made me think that I feel the day before my brother actually committed suicide, I remember him being so happy. And I did this mental health first aid course, and it said that's actually one of the signs if someone is quite low and down and all of a sudden they just become happy out of nowhere. then that's when you should actually start asking them questions. He was the happiest I'd ever seen him the day before. But I think it's
the kind of highs and the lows being very close together.
Well, the high is they know that they're going to end things. They know that this pain is going away.
So it's like a relief.
So the day before, he was so happy because he knew what he was going to do. He knew all his pain and his depression, everything he was going through was going to stop. So we just thought he was just genuinely just happy. But that the next day, that news came.
Wow.
But yeah, I think communication is a really big thing, because if you were able to, like, especially men and boys, if we taught them that they can talk about how they're feeling, and we were able to have those skills, like, that's why I think having a mental health first aid certificate should be something that should be as common as a first aid certificate as well, because everyone in schools and workplace has those. But mental health first aid courses are a new thing actually, but every single establishment should have one, so you should be able to identify these signs and symptoms. But in addition to that, knowing that a person, if you are a colleague that's going through something, that you could have someone in, it wouldn't be a replacement for therapy, but you could come in and talk to someone about how you're feeling, and having those open communications, or even in your household, if there was a mental health first aider, you could feel comfortable in having those open communications, and you would know how to respond to people's worries too. And then if you did know that, most of our worries are just in our mind, and our brains. I always tell the kids,
Imagination.
yeah, it's our mind playing tricks on us. But if you can actually sit down and discuss it and kind of plan it out, then you realise it's not that big of a deal. All of the things that he was going through at the time, realistically, were not that big of a deal.
You've spent a lot of your life working on mental health in young people, and you've got an incredible background, which is just giving you this very, very powerful why to do what you do. Do you think that men and women have the same challenges when it comes to mental health, or do you think they have quite different challenges? I often feel like we try and approach mental health as one size fits all, but I kind of feel like men and women have different pressures, different ways of understanding their emotions, different ways of expressing them, but we try and just blank canvas it so everyone's the same, and that might be one of the reasons we're slowing down when it comes to male mental health.
My phrase, I think I said it already today, we tell boys, and I've had to make myself aware of it as well, to man up. The child cries in the classroom, you're like, man up, you'll be okay. And then one of the girls cries, you give her a little hug. It's okay for her to cry. And then when that man or that boy grows into an adult and shuts down when he experiences anything other than happiness, we're like, why? And then we don't realise it's because when they were growing up, we told them to stop showing their and expressing their emotions. I've seen it already. I remember there was a kid in my class, he fell off the chair and he hit his head and he was visibly in pain. I'm like, are you okay? Are you okay? Yeah, he's fine. He said he was fine, but he was so, you could tell he was in pain. And if that was a girl, she'd cry and she'll come give me a hug.
Yeah.
And I would give her a hug too. But I know at home, most probably in his household, if he did fall over, get a little rub on the head, you're okay.
Yeah,
But his sister would have got a hug. So that's how he's been conditioned to behave. So it just stems, everything, you do therapy, stems from childhood. Every single thing stems from childhood. So that's why we've got to get them when they're young, because it's so hard. Like at first I started in the adult wellbeing space. I remember I was telling you, but it's so hard, especially as I'm not a therapist, to figure out how to get people to change their mindsets when you're stuck in your ways. But for children, you can do it in such simple ways and condition them from a young age.
Yeah, it's a really, really interesting conversation, isn't it? Childhood conditioning and how that then plays out as we get older. I wonder if this concept around this male mental health month now, isn't it? Remember, and I look at it like we encourage men to show their emotions. We want men. The narrative in society right now today is men should show their emotions. But I think that's quite a vague statement. I think if men were reactive in their emotions, that would actually be pretty destructive for their environments, right? If you imagine the male kind of typical response to getting hurt is actually aggression and frustration. So if they were to immediately show their emotions, it would be quite intimidating to everyone around them, to their families, to their communities, in the workplace, whatever it is. And so for me, I think this is the way I think of looking at male mental health differently to female mental health, is because we encourage men to show their emotions. But what does that actually mean? I think that means to understand, to observe, not to repress, but to find a way of processing our emotions in a healthy environment. I look at a lot of, I had a brilliant podcast the other day with a guy called Shiloh from America. And he does a lot of work on mental health for dads in particular. And it was really interesting because he was like, well, you know, if you as a guy show your emotions, if you're really sad and you start crying in the workplace, that might then be damaging to your mental health long term because of the attention you're going to get from other guys around you. And it was like, wow, not only do the guys need to think about how they express their emotions, but the context and the environment in which they do it are all things at play here, which, you know, could actually be damaging longer term.
Oh, 100%, because if that was a female, we'd be more forgiving.
Right. You'd be like, that's like, you know, that's kind of expected. It's okay. We'll look after you. We'll get you through it. But if a guy, you know, bursts into tears in a very male-dominated environment, I think that he would start to lose a bit of trust from the other men around him.
Well, we have to start somewhere.
We do, don't we? And this is it. But it's one of those things. It's a bit like, yeah, I had another interview. It was about bullying. How can we, you know, we can't prevent bullying happening entirely. I don't think. I think it's part of the human condition. It's part of learning about socializing, but we can slow it down and we can reduce it. And one of the answers I got back to that was, well, if everyone was kind, then it wouldn't happen. And so my view is, well, it's not a light switch. You can't just turn it on and off and suddenly it doesn't occur, right? So we can try and plant these seeds of understanding from a young age, which is why I know you love working with young people, because the impact of your work is far greater reaching, I think, right?
Yeah, another thing as well, is I love what you're doing, is that bullying can never be stopped, okay? Because some parents might do so much work on their children to help self-regulate their emotions, but you might have another household that isn't doing that, and it has a ripple effect. But it's about teaching children not to internalize. So building that confidence and that self-esteem. Once you have that, even in the workplace as an adult, you might go into a workplace with a toxic boss, but it's having, again, teaching children to have that empathy, that awareness, understanding that people are usually projecting in like a child-friendly way, and then just being sure of yourself so you don't download that into your system. So I think things like what I'm doing and you're doing really helps with that.
It's one of those things, isn't it? It's the negative voice you've got in your head sometimes telling you can't do something or you're not good enough for this or whatever it is. I always ask people to really think, whose voice is that? Because it's really our own, right? Normally it's a voice that we picked up somewhere along the way, and it could be a parent or it could be a friend or it could be a teacher who's told you you're not good at maths, or who's told you, a parent who's told you you're stupid or whatever it is, right? And suddenly that voice is in your head. And it's one of those things, we're always being coached.
Yes, the alter ego that you stepped into because of someone else. But again,
like you said, you downloaded the data, now you got to live with it.
And it's not too late.
Hopefully not.
That's why we're here. But yeah, it's just teaching them the skills and the tools that they can do to just get that off their system, really. Whenever that negative voice comes in, push it out. There was a couple of things that I actually was teaching some parents in the workshop recently on ways that they can do that. But then again, parents and teachers need to be equipped with these skills. The thing is, a lot of people are actually scared to step into this space. One thing that I've heard a couple of times is, oh, Sherri, what qualifies you to do these things and create these resources? And I said, teaching for 10 years and having over 300 students in my class, observing their behavior, trying strategies. You just need to try and not being scared. Because otherwise, as I was saying to you earlier, when a child does present an issue, sometimes they could be waiting months to access therapy. Sometimes they never access it because of stigma, or they won't access it because of finances. But there's certain things that you can do that are really cheap, or even free, as the mental health first aid service or tool to support children so they don't end up moving up the ladder when in that mental health zone, which we don't want them to hit. So just keeping them there until they can access that service, or you can condition their parents to maybe buy into therapy.
So you've mentioned therapy a few times. Have you gone through therapy yourself?
Oh yeah, I really have. And do you know what? I use some of the things that I learned in therapy, and as a teacher, I've thought about how I can use them in my resources and in the classroom, my tools, in a child-friendly way.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things where if you go through something yourself and you learn, it's like you're then able to help so many more people because of that understanding, right?
Yeah.
It's not just theory. It's like you've gone through it, you get it, and you can impart that knowledge.
Almost as a child, I've gone through it. I've got to understand. I've seen my siblings go through it. As an adult, I've had to deal with things as well, and I've worked through those. And then as a teacher, as I was saying, I see 300 cases, 300 individuals in my 10 years of just teaching in primary school. That's not even nursery. And then observing the parents too, and being able to identify, this is why that child behaves that way. That's why that, you know? So yeah, the experience has been great, and I think that's why I've been able to create certain things.
There's a lot of different types of therapy as well. I mean, have you done various different types, or?
So I've actually had 2 therapists. The first one, do you know what? I can't remember exactly what their definitions of therapy were, but there's one woman that gives you practical things that you can do, which is who I'm with now, and she is amazing. And then there was another one that just listened, and she made me do a lot of talking. It was just a lot of talking and understanding and getting to the root cause of the problem, which this one does as well, but she gives me really good strategies that I can take away with me. But yeah, there are different types of ones, but I do prefer to go with qualified and experienced therapists, and one that can relate to me. So I always make sure that they're ethnic minority too. And there's not actually many ethnic minority therapists, and that's why a lot of ethnic minority households don't feel comfortable to go. Me and my friends are always talking about this. There's certain things that you can relate to as an ethnic minority. My therapist is black, and if I talk about things like being beaten, she can approach that in a different way. Whereas one of my friends, Joe, I don't know whether it was this specific therapist, but I remember she was telling me when she was expressing about being beaten in the household. We all laugh about it. It's funny because we literally would laugh about it in our household, cousins, family.
Just because it's so normal and typical.
Because it's so normal.
It's a part of the culture.
It is.
It's just passed down the generation, yeah.
Passed out. Well, this therapist says, let's call it what it is. You were abused. And like, she was triggered because she never thought of it as abuse.
The therapist was triggered.
No.
Oh, right.
My friend was. She said, let's call it what it was. It was abuse.
She started looking back and thinking, oh, God. We were all abused, all my friends and family then.
Before, we just thought it was just a part of the normal household.
Yeah.
That's what happened.
So how do you look at it now then? Now that you've got that knowledge?
Like, my mum just was doing what she knew. Yeah. I don't think the abuse was... Well, the abuse... The corporal punishment wasn't... Never really...
Sounds worse now. You've got a corporal punishment. Actually, abuse sounded better.
The meeting...
At least you could laugh at that. Maybe that's silent abuse, I don't know.
Well, do you know what my auntie used to do, actually? She used to say to my cousins, go and get a replay. So she had this belt. And it was a replay because every time she'd lift it out, she'd go get a replay. They had to choose the belt. And we'd sit at Christmas and we would literally be cracking up and giggling. Even now.
Having to choose which one?
Which one we're going to be beating on.
Wow, really?
Still like, but you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
In certain households and certain, even classes, this conversation would be taken and internalized differently. But for me and my household and the people that I surround myself with, usually that are ethnic minorities, we'd be able to laugh about something like this.
I mean, I talked to my dad, and when he went to school, and they were all beaten. You know, that was just normal.
Yeah.
You know, like schools in the UK in those days, you do something wrong, that's it, the ruler or the slipper or whatever the teacher had, right?
Yeah.
And I think that obviously then changed. They banned that in the educational system. Now I think they go within half a metre of a child, they're in trouble, right? So, I mean, I think everything's moved on quite a lot in the UK from the education point of view. I think it's crazy when I think back to this concept that corporal punishment from other adults on your kids. It's just hard to imagine, isn't it?
Oh, most definitely. But I bet behaviour for learning in the classroom was amazing.
Do you think so?
Yeah.
Or when they just find other ways to be sneaky? I mean, you found other ways to be sneaky, right?
Outside of the classroom, definitely.
So in the classroom, they were well behaved.
Outside
of the classroom, they were worse, right?
Yeah, I couldn't imagine it in the classroom now. Just like, as a teacher, just loving and caring. I couldn't imagine just hitting someone else's...
I just look at I look at my kids, and I'm like, when I'm raising my kids and I'm parenting my kids, I'm thinking, you know, I feel like I'm very effective just by being calm around them. And the more calm I am, the more I'm aware of my own emotions and what's triggering me. Yeah. And even little things like, you know, removing your kids and telling them to go to their room or whatever, that doesn't actually solve the problem. It just solves the problem for you.
So as a parent, you're removing your child to go to your room, go sit on the naughty step, whatever parents say. I mean, we didn't even use that term, but it's like when you go in and remove your child from a situation, it's because you as a parent can't cope with the emotion that you're having to deal with in this situation, right? And so now I'm at this situation where if I remove my child from that because they're arguing with the other child, I'll go sit with them for 20 minutes, do breathing techniques with them or something, talk about why they were doing that. And I just think how parenting has evolved, right? Like that would not have happened when I was a kid. And it's one of those things where, like you said, we're not born with a guidebook, but it's kind of our responsibility as a parent to keep on evolving, to keep on learning, and to find new ways that studies have shown work and remove the things that don't, and take the things from our parents that did work really well, and then add our own bits that we understand work and, evolve it as a kind of development process, right?
Most definitely. It's funny that you said that you go and speak to your child and take your time out to have sharing time, because one of the journals that I actually sell to parents is it replaces that go to your room. It replaces give me your iPad. It's a journal if you haven't got time, because some parents really don't have that time to apply that you do. But it's a journal that is prompted, and it helps the children to go and look at what they've done, write it down, look at the impact that it could have had on themselves and others. Think about the way that they can make it better with some prompts, and then set some behaviour goals. And if you were a parent and you were like, go to your room and use your calming journal, and then later on when you do have time, be it in the week or at the end of the day, let's go through your calming journal and think about that behaviour. What were your goals? Have you worked on them? That's a better way to deal with that behaviour, because then sometimes, as we were saying, children are acting out, maybe they want attention. But in addition to that, it can help you actually get to the root cause of the problem. Yeah. Rather than just, as you said, sometimes parents are busy, but that helps.
It's just such a superpower, I think, as a young person to grow up learning how to regulate your emotions. That's such a superpower, to avoid things like depression, to process bullying, to process difficult situations or social situations you might go through, to process high amounts of pressure. Yeah. And I look at a lot of society nowadays, and we've got this really unhealthy relationship with pressure. It's like pressure's bad, we shouldn't feel uncomfortable, all this sort of stuff. I feel like that's the wrong way of looking at it. I think that pressure's bad if we're dealing with it the wrong way. Like if we don't teach kids how to manage and process pressure, it is therefore bad, because the result of unprocessed pressure or stress we can't control means that we then have all these negative situations and issues. And so I really feel like the success we experience in life is directly proportionate to the amount of pressure and stress we can take on. And so if you want to achieve something in sport, or you want to achieve something in business or your career, whatever it is, you need to take on high amounts of pressure. And so to do that, we need to teach young people to handle pressure. To do that, we need to teach young people how to regulate their own emotions, right? How to process their own emotions, how to calm themselves down. And it's little things like this, like not sending the kid to their room, but actually walking them through, having a process where they can actually process those emotions they're feeling. And it's amazing how just planting those little seeds, I think, is the answer to a lifetime of self-regulation.
100%, and teaching children self-care practices, because we need a good balance. Even as an adult, when you're under pressure, there are certain things that you need as an adult. You need a sense of achievement, you need a sense of connection, and you need to relax and sleep.
Connection, achievement, and to relax.
Yeah, and sleep.
A couple.
Well, self-care in general, but you need to have a good balance of those actually. And without one of those, you're going to have an off balance.
Yeah.
But teaching children, but the thing is, you can't teach children if you don't know how to do it yourself. Because I know a lot of parents nowadays, well, quite a few parents, focus so hard on the academics. So kids will go to school, then they come home and they do tutoring. And on the weekend, they might go and do extracurricular activities that are not focused on boosting confidence. It's something that generally the parents are interested in. So when do the kids get to do something that brings them joy and brings them a true sense of achievement? So it's about having that self-awareness as a parent and having those discussions as you do with your kids to find out what truly brings them joy and trying to fit that in so they're not always people-pleasing as also.
That's a really interesting one, people-pleasing. Do you think that we're raising agreeable kids because we don't want to have uncomfortable situations with friends and family? Well, if you look at, give you an example, your child walks into a room, there's family around, there's an uncle that they don't like. It's a bit of an awkward, horrible uncle. That's an example, right? but you go and hug him, say hello, be polite, because we as adults don't want to be in an uncomfortable situation. We teach our kids to be very agreeable. Have you noticed that?
I actually just recorded something on this.
Oh, really?
So I don't like hugs. I don't mind hugs because we never grew up being a hugging family.
Right.
I don't mind hugging kids, but my friends know. Some of my friends know. Well, I don't know some friends hug me, but most of my friends know Sherri's not a hugger. So I had a situation.
You should have told me that earlier.
Well, I forced myself to do it. So I had a situation at work where we were in a meeting, and my principal actually shared the news article from the Gulf News, and it basically was speaking about my why for starting the business. And afterwards, one of my colleagues came out and she went to give me a hug. And I said, "Oh, no, you're okay. You don't need to give me a hug. I don't need to do hugs yet." She was so offended. But do you know what? Before, I used to just feel uncomfortable in the moment and then feel uncomfortable afterwards. But now I've started to set my boundaries.
Do you feel like you had to before?
I felt like I had to because my parents did. And I made,
from childhood where you were told to be polite, accept this, physical interaction with someone because that's polite.
And that's because the parent didn't want to be embarrassed. But I got the idea, and I was like, parents, if your child does not want to hug, teach them to greet you in another way. You've got to teach them consent. Yeah. And that's why a lot of other issues happen. Children need to know that their body is their own. Asking a child to hug an adult that they don't want to can cause them to be people pleasers. And in addition to that, it might even teach them that they're not in charge of their body, and if someone else wants to touch it, it's okay. But we should be teaching them that they are okay. They need to have or give you consent before you hug them or touch them. So parents should be saying, "You can give your uncle a handshake then, or just say hey." It's not being rude. Yeah. You're greeting them in a polite way, but we need to teach our children that their body is their own. They have the right to have consent and have boundaries. If they don't want to hug someone, they don't have to.
It's really interesting because I think it's like striking a balance between not teaching them to be too agreeable, but also trying to help them be polite. My daughters will go into school, and there'll be 4 or 5 teachers at reception, all like, "Oh, hi," excited to see her, and she'll get really nervous and just ignore them all. And of course we're like, "Say hello,"
Yeah.
And of course a part of me is like, am I just teaching her to be agreeable? If she's feeling overwhelmed in that situation, this is the right thing to do to say to her, "Look, you don't have to say hello," or to find some sort of way of acknowledging them. I don't know. What's the balance? Do you know what I mean?
The balance again, keyword empathy. Who the receivers and the teachers should have empathy and understand that that's how some children behave. We'll give her space until she's ready.
Yeah. It's always got to come down to the adult, I think, and the adult's understanding, which then brings us to the whole modeling of behavior, right?
Yeah.
One of the things I love about parenting is, if you had to sum up what it means or how to be a good parent, I think that the whole focus is just on being a good person. And I think that's kind of relieving, because if you're struggling to know what to do as a parent to be a good parent, then if you just focus on improving yourself as a person, ultimately your kids model that, they copy that, and they end up being good people, right?
And also understanding that you need community. Just everything that we've discussed right now can be overwhelming. There's a parent that was listening to this and felt like they weren't doing enough.
Where do they start, right?
Exactly. That's why we need community. So where you're not able to do it, someone else can fill in the gaps.
Whenever I do these podcasts, these interviews, I always feel like parents would look at it and I'm interviewing incredible people, thought leaders in this, psychologists, doctors, whatever, authors. And I imagine parents are looking at it thinking, God, that's overwhelming. There's a lot to take in. Yeah. Where do I start? I've had this opinion, that one, and 30, 40 people we've interviewed, all with amazing ideas and concepts. And I've always tried to bring my own kind of authentic view on it, as I've struggled with this is what I've dealt with, and bring humor to the whole concept of parenting, and the fact that even though I've worked with 30,000 kids around the world over the last 15 years, I'm still learning as I go, right? We're all basically winging it as parents, because there's no guidebook. And I think the reality is you do the best you can. You try and research as much as you can. You implement the stuff that works for you, and there's best practice. And the thing about a community, in any community, whether it's sport or business or parents community, you share best practice.
Yeah.
So best practice is what actually works. Okay, well, Maybe corporal punishment doesn't work as effectively as we thought, so let's stop doing that. Maybe time out on their own doesn't work as well, so we can stop doing that. Maybe this doesn't work, that doesn't work. This works, I've tried this, why don't we do that? And so, suddenly by interviewing people, it's been amazing for me because I've picked up so many ideas, of best practice of how to help my kids regulate their emotions, how to help them become more present, how to discipline kids, whatever it is that I've needed to learn. I've managed to pick up lots of things from that community aspect. So it is really, really key.
In one of my parent workshops, actually, I had a parent who was really, she couldn't make up her mind as to whether she wanted to come to the workshop, and then she was really happy that she did, because one of the main things was obviously some of the things that she took away, but just having that space where she could talk about how she was feeling and knowing that other people going through it, because especially with social media these days, it seems like everyone's living their best lives.
Yeah.
And it's the only space.
It's representation of a reality, really, isn't it?
And it truly is, because there are a lot of people struggling. And I think this is the only time when I would say misery loves company is a great thing, where you can sit down and just talk about everything that you're struggling with. Even if people don't have the tools and the resources, just dumping everything that you need to dump and finding that community, whether it's within your immediate family or a group where you can go to and talk, or even the workshops. I think that's really important.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's one of those things where they feel they're in an environment where they can actually share, right, without criticism. And I look at parenting a bit like martial arts, right? You can look from the sidelines and critique, but you're not the one in the arena, right? And so it's like, you're a martial artist, you go to compete in a big competition, and everyone can, you see them online, all the kind of martial arts fans who have never done any training, criticizing the competitor who's in the arena. And you see people who have, all right? Yeah. You see people who have, never had kids, and they say things like, well, I'd never let my child use an iPad when we're going out for a meal. And the second they have kids, well, iPad straight away, Like, we can criticize from the sideline, but until you're actually in it, going through it, you have no idea what that's actually like.
Oh, most definitely. And I try to think about that when I'm giving my advice as well. You have to think about, I guess, this is one of the benefits, I guess, of being a teacher, because I can see there are some parents that are super busy. There are parents that are at home. There are parents that don't have enough money to actually provide those resources as well. And it's about being able to step into other people's paradigms. But unfortunately, you can't do that if people are not sharing their true struggles. Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about your work now and the app that you've developed. Just a bit more detail on that. It'd be great to share that info.
Sure. So I designed these journals to help children, help with restorative justice. So it's a replacement from the standard ways that we, not a replacement actually, it's an addition to the standard ways that we manage behaviour. So, for example, in the classrooms, we currently have like Class Dojo. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. Yep. Where you get the points, which is great because the kids get to collect points for great behaviour, positive reinforcement. Or you take away points for negative behaviour, but then there's never a discussion. So my journals, they're put in a calm corner. So every classroom in my school, and most schools have them now. If you don't, you need one. A calm corner where you go over to the calm corner if there was an incident. You say to a child, you're going to go over to the calm corner for 8 minutes, set your timer, and you're going to use a journal. And in the journal, the kids have to identify the feeling that they're feeling right now. Say, for example, if they've got into a fight or they've said something mean to their friends, they have an option. And then what they'd do is they'd write down the behaviour so they can identify why they've been there. And then there's an option for them to look out how that's affected themselves and others. So there's an option, didn't finish my work, made someone else upset, made myself upset. And as I was saying, the goals. And I think this is a great thing to use in the moment, rather than one of the things that a lot of schools do now is you'd have some challenging behaviour and then you'd send an email out to the behaviour, whoever's in charge of behaviour and the inclusion officer, and then someone will come 5 days later, 2 days later. By that time, the child's already forgot what happened. So it's in the moment. So if just 8 minutes over there, then even if they're not setting their goals, you can come later at break time and go and look in that book and see what happened.
You can see how they processed it, yeah.
The kids in my classroom, and people think that it's such a hard thing to implement, even I send it to parents as well, but I have got 23 children in my classroom that use these. Now, I don't have to send them. I don't get disturbed in my classroom. They go over if there was an incident. There was one time I didn't even see what had happened outside in the playground.
Oh, really?
A child came in and wrote in his journal. He grasped himself up.
I could go away with it. Wow.
So like I have that in the physical form, but I also have an app. So in the app, we've got the Calm and Reflection Journal that teaches reflective practices and restorative justice. Then in there as well, one thing, I don't know if you knew this, but children develop math anxiety from as young as 8. And I was talking to you earlier about a child that used to have anxiety attacks before an exam, Arabic exam. So in there, that's where the idea came from when I was developing the app actually. I have a growth mindset station and an affirmation station where the kids look into the mirror or in the camera, and there's mindset and growth mindset statements they can actually say and internalize to keep them calm. But in addition to that, in there's like a mind dump it section. So some schools have these things called worry boxes where the kids can go and put things that they're worried about. So if they've been bullied, they can put that in there. But they have had their own individual mind dump when they can just write something about how they're feeling or their thoughts. That could be used in break time, and they all have their own individual logins. There's a mood tracker as well. So like, say for example, every Wednesday, Mohammed is tired, and we've noticed that there's been struggles or low progress in math, and math is on a Wednesday morning. Then the teacher can go and look on her desktop, and she can like check out the mood tracker and see Mohammed's been tired every Wednesday because that's what he's put as the emotion, and can call up the mum, and it might just be something as simple.
Tuesday night? Is it a late night for the family, or
just a simple discussion?
Yeah.
And there was a kid one time, she used to cry every day for the whole term. She wasn't in my class. Every day for the whole term. We found out it's because she hated math. If that tool was there,
Wow.
could have had a discussion.
It's pinpointing an emotion to the point in time where these things occur, and then trying to look for patterns, isn't it?
Exactly.
And automating it is so cool. Well, the way that is done through the app is really fun. And kids are more likely to do things if it's on the iPad. Like, we know that, don't we? You give them the iPad and they're more likely to do it. So,
Yeah.
I think that's a really clever way of doing it. It's a clever way of meeting kids where they're at,
Yes.
and then getting more buy-in because they're there, they're engaged with it anyway.
And in the moment, and getting them to name and tame their emotions, and just solving all the problems immediately. And the app and the journal give the kids tips on how they can manage these emotions. It's in there. So if they want to, they can talk to a teacher, or they can do breathing exercises, or they can go into the mind dumping station. And I feel like schools all need a calming corner with activities that kids can do as well.
So that's a corner within the normal classroom. So it's not like a separate room. It's like a place in the classroom.
In the classroom, the thing is, if we're trying to teach children how to express their emotions, why are we saying go outside of the classroom and do it? I'm going to go over there for 5 minutes, show everyone it's okay to go over there for 5 minutes and take a brain break.
Had a great podcast interview with Adam the OT, Dubai OT here, and he spoke about like chill out rooms, separate rooms that they have, sensory rooms, and they're either overly too much sensory or not enough sensory in there. They feel like prisons actually, for kids. And so kids go in there and it actually does the opposite of what the teachers want. Whereas a chill out corner, I can understand because they're still inclusive, still part of the group. But they've got that area where they can go and calm down, process their emotions, still kind of feel like they're in the environment, and then come back into it, right?
Yeah, and having a timer, because when we grow into adults and we need to take a break because you might have had a stressful week or a stressful year, and we need that mental health day, you're only allowed a day. Just knowing that you've got 8 minutes to just go and work through your emotions, and then we need to come back to the classroom, and later on if you need to go to another space, that's different. But making it fully inclusive and teaching kids that it's okay to express those emotions and let people know that you're not feeling okay in this moment is one way to just basically not cure, but help aid what's going on in the world of adults right now. Because these young people are going to be adults.
Yeah, eventually.
Yeah.
Sherri, I think what you're doing is amazing. I think that the whole concept around the app is really, really powerful. What was the name of the app, and where can everyone find it?
It's TELW. It's only for schools.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Unlucky.
It's only for schools.
When's it going to be for everyone
Remember,
else?
community. The schools need to be involved. I am going to build a parent one, but I'm just working on the features right now. And for one person it's just me that's actually created this. I have a team that are working behind me, but I am the creator, and I'm doing all the research. I want to make sure whatever comes out to parents is something that is really usable, not just in theory. Yeah. So yeah, maybe in about a year's time I'll develop the parent one. But Tell W is for schools, but I do sell resources for parents, which are the tangible journals and self-care subscription boxes, what parents can buy for children.
And where can they find those?
And the SELHub.com.
The SEL Hub.
.com, sorry. Yeah, SEL Hub.com.
Awesome. If you were going to finish up with one piece of advice for parents to improve their child's mental health,
Yeah.
what would that one piece of advice be?
I would say work on being a voice for your child's well-being. Think about ways that you can do that.
Awesome. Sherri, thank you so much for joining me today.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
I really hope you enjoyed today's Warrior Academy podcast episode. We're going to keep creating these episodes because I know that so many parents find them useful or get insights or get ideas about how to develop their child's character. But it all comes down to the 3 C's: confidence, conduct, and concentration. So if you want to get a deep insight into the levels of confidence your child has, the level of concentration they have, or the level of conduct they have, so that you can actually put a score next to it and then work towards increasing those scores like we do in the Warrior Academy, then I'd love to invite you to fill in the Breakthrough Area Assessment. It takes about 5 minutes of your time, and you will get a personalized PDF report on your child's 3 C's. To access the Breakthrough Area Assessment and find out your child's 3 C's score, all you need to do is go to www.breakthrougharea.com.